I never wanted to do
I'd like to call this Parks and Recreation special meeting, committee special meeting to order. We're here to just talk about Highland Farms and vote I waive. Make y'all happy. We have lots of guests, and we have another one coming, I see.
No,
he's going next
He's
door.
got our meeting.
Oh, okay, you're right, yeah. And I thank you all for coming, particularly our guests. And I'm gonna ask you to introduce yourselves.
Patrick Kane, I'm a member of the RTM District 1, currently serve on Public Works.
Susan Marks, Board of Selectmen.
Kate Bush, Town Administrator.
John Cena, Chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission, also District 1, I guess.
Jamie Stevenson, First Selectman, also District 1.
Thank you, good district. Okay, John's only with us for half an hour because he has a meeting at 8, so we're going to make best use of him. But I thought maybe we should start with just a little background. Boring, I know. But anyway, this is where we've come from. So we're here for 19-9, consideration and action on an appropriation of $609,000 for the Highland Farm Improvements Project and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes to meet said appropriation. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review the documents on the P&Z website and the Selectmen's website. Just as a reminder, so I'll take you through a little bit of history. Planning and Zoning in January 2017 approved the subdivision application from the Oxbridge Hunt and Racquet Club to divide its property into 2 parcels and sell the town of Darien 16.296 plus or minus acres. The town purchased Highland Farm, although it wasn't called that then, for $6,250,000. At that time, as part of the purchase agreement, the open space deed restriction on the property was modified. The open space deed restriction was a tax settlement agreement between the town and the club that had put in place a 30-year open space deed restriction and a 40-year right of first refusal if any portion of the property was sold. Permitted use included the following as negotiated as part of the purchase of the property. All its current uses, passive recreation, including but not limited to picnicking, walking trails, and hiking, natural grass athletic fields, grading and filling reasonably necessary, parking as required by special permit use, temporary removable seating, 1 building limited to 1 story, and 1,000 square feet for use as public restrooms, storage, and a possible concession stand. Other uses agreeable to the town and the Oxbridge Riding and Racquet Club. The Oxbridge Riding and Racquet Club may use the transfer property for 1 week each June for the annual Oxbridge Charity Horse Show, and at other times upon mutual agreement that do not interfere with the town use. In the town site plan application to P&Z, the town proposed to refurbish and expand 2 existing parking areas, construct a pedestrian stone chip walking jogging pathway, and locate a single-story shed and a portable bathroom there, including construction of a stormwater management system, minor regrading of the property, and installation of ancillary signage and fencing, and to perform related site development activities. Proposal to utilize the property for programmed active and passive recreational uses and activities, as well as special events with restrictions on use. That's where we started. P&Z made their ruling with stipulations on July 24th, 2018, which were amended on January 29th, 2019, and you'll be glad to know I'm not going to read them to you. Here we go. As part of P&Z's process, in-depth studies were done on traffic, parking lot construction, the walking path, possible placement of the shed, which is 20 by 12, and the portable bathroom or bathrooms, and screening, both natural and fencing. This information provides a basis for this appropriation request. And so from that, we're going to go to your questions. I hope I got most of that right.
If you're looking at me, I think you reminded me of certain aspects, actually.
So,
Mark, I see it.
I know you all had questions at our last meeting, and so you voted to postpone your vote. And so I have the minutes from that meeting, so I have questions from that, plus questions I asked folks to send to me. And so I'm just going to start, and people can chime in if there's stuff that's left out, or oh, we need to elaborate more. All right, if I can find it. Okay. Since we don't have John very long, and since parking is a big hot button issue, if you could sort of give a little background, a little explanation, and your consultant, and then just the way it's gonna envision to be put together and why that's the best way to do it.
I'll do it best from memory.
It's okay.
So, the town, just to break this down, the town was the applicant, and we had to review the special permit and the site plan. One of the concerns was parking, and you have to realize that, and it comes into play actually at tonight's hearing, but this is not a dedicated parkland. This is only a deed-restricted town-owned property. So with that come parking regulations that apply. So what we did was request that the town hire an expert, and then we, in our review capacity, hired a peer review, traffic consultant and parking consultant. And we basically took the uses that the town outlined at the time, and went to the town went to its consultant, and we went to our consultant and said, okay, how much parking do we actually need? And then will this parking impact traffic and safety in the area? So with the uses that were envisioned, with basically the broad guidelines that the industry uses, I forget the book that they always go to, but,
UTC.
I'm sorry?
That's the MUTC.
Thank you. They must zone out during when they talk about that. But anyway, they go to these national standards, and then they came up with a recommendation. Our peer review expert, Mike Galante, who also works as a peer review for the town often, reviewed those, the amount of spaces, and recommend actually something interesting, that we don't allow the overlap of scheduled activities. That if you overlapped, you'd have people coming and going at the same time, and therefore you would actually need more parking. The location was a big issue. Craig Flaherty worked for the town. Many of you probably do know Craig, but he grew up in town. Redness and Mead, engineer, and has a acute knowledge of the sensitivity of that site, and also the needs from a parking standpoint. So the location was to use the two existing, they call them parking lots, but if you've been up there, it's kind of broken gravel that's been kind of grown over the decades. And then to put it one way, in and out on each parking lot. And then that would mitigate the width needed, and then put it in a place that would least inhibit the vistas of the crowned property. So I think from a parking standpoint and traffic standpoint, there's a lot of public comment, but no one else brought an expert to comment that that was too much parking. There is an overflow area required, so when there's a big event that either the Hunt Club, or I should call it the Rack and Riding Club now, is to use it for their annual horse show, which they're setting up now, or the town, that ropes can be dropped and they can kind of extend the parking areas, if you will, for those special events. In the meantime, we allowed a temporary parking area. We put a deadline on it, I believe it's in spring of 2020. The parking lot is a failure, to be honest with you. It's got deep, wet, grassy mud, and you can just see the indentations. And if there were ever, the property was heavily utilized, we'd see cars up there at wheel wells on the weekend. So it's very important for the commission to actually see this project move forward in terms of permanent parking areas. I think the other questions that came up were the type of asphalt being used in the parking area. So, pervious pavement, not always used, but it looks like regular blacktop. If you weren't accustomed to talking about it, you wouldn't notice it. The biggest application is Weburn, when it expanded its driving range and built parking around the west side of the property. That's all pervious pavement. The beauty of that is, think of it almost like the turf fields. If you watched any of that, there's a layer of gravel loosely packed underneath. It acts as a reservoir, and then the pavement goes on top, and it's pervious because it's not as packed as traditional pavement. That's going to be for the drive areas, and then there's going to be grass pavers for the parking areas, parking stones.
And also for the parking for the handicapped
That's,
spaces?
that's the porous asphalt.
That's still
yeah.
at porous asphalt, yeah, but that's it for, as far as parking, just the, yeah.
Yeah, and so the traffic flow is looked at, the traffic, again, by two experts, not just one. And again, I joked when we had our conversation, but Craig Flaherty, he's a fellow Lehigh grad, I like propping that up, great engineering program, but in all seriousness, he knows the property and tried to design it with least impact. One other, you mentioned the shed. We talked a lot about the placement and had a lot of neighbor input, and I think there was even input after the fact, and we encouraged that. So, as they develop this property, the placement of the shed, may be moved, and we encourage continued discussions on that front.
That and the porta potty probably.
Yeah, well, that's gonna go hand in hand probably because we want the screening, the shed screening to not just, we don't want a big blue or green porta potty in the middle of the property with no screening.
Exactly. Okay, that's good. Thank you, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That was
keep
a
going.
lot.
But I know that was one of the
It's a-
biggest issues
it
that
was, we
came up
talked-
through neighbor comments and public comment, and one that we looked long and hard. And just as an overview, we knew this was a sensitive property. We knew that there was sensitivity amongst the neighbors. We're friends with a few of them. So when that occurs, we set aside a full night of public hearing. We reserved the auditorium because we knew we have a big crowd. And so we got a lot of input and comment before deliberations.
Okay, the folks that asked the questions about the parking, do you have any follow-up questions?
I have a question. The 92 spots, how much activities do you plan to have if you need that many parking spots? I understand that depending on how much, if you have, I don't know, because I'm
So
not into
I'll tell you what
football or
we-
soccer, I don't know how much activity will there actually be if you need that much parking.
I'll tell you what was presented to us. It was the use of 4 fields and then concurrent passive activities that went into the calculations that the experts brought.
Use 4 fields at the same time.
Yeah,
For little people, I think.
yeah.
that's the
I mean,
idea.
again, when we're talking fields, there's not gonna be any constructed fields. There's gonna be some minor,
There's gonna be a lot of,
minor regrading.
yeah.
But there's not going, I think a lot of people have that Parks Master Plan in their heads. That's not what was presented to us as a schematic for their property, okay? So they assumed, again, the experts assumed and went to the, national standards. If we were to have 4 concurrent games and we were to have some passive activities, these are the number of parking spaces that we recommend. And our peer reviewer, again, recommended the same thing.
Okay.
Or concurred, I should say. He didn't recommend, he concurred with that assessment.
Exactly. And so that's what it is. And they're where they are because you told us why. That was another question we had from Emily. I had it from Emily. She wanted to know if the parking could be moved, and I said no.
And that was
They are where they are
and that was-
at this point.
That was also discussed, maybe you put it around the west side of the property, but then you're limiting it to basically one exit and entrance, and then you get closer to that, with the traffic lining up or queue from Mansfield and Ox Ridge, which at times, and we actually went through all the traffic data and there were traffic counts along the way, that would heavily interfere with that if you had one parking lot with 90 spots. So again, this is now distributing the exits in 2 different directions, or 3 if you count Ox Ridge Road. So again, we looked at it pretty hard.
I looking at the things that were online, some of the examples of what the fencing might look like. I liked the way it looked. This is just my personal, I don't know if that's what it's gonna end up being, because I realized that all the numbers that we got and it'll all go out to bid. And so, the numbers, the
Oh, you mean-
estimates for the building of these things.
Like the parking lot
The
design.
fencing, and the fencing
Yeah.
around the parking.
So
yeah.
that's an important point also,
Make it
and
look good.
might consider what we looked at. So we want a look and feel almost that it's one continuous property still. That was one of the design elements and factors. So when you look at the wood wheel stops, I'm sure they're more than concrete. We don't look at financials at all, not allowed to. But we love the look and feel of you know, the wooden ties, I don't like calling it fencing, but the
It was-
parking
It was
area.
they called it post and chain?
Yeah, post and chain.
So it's not what's there now?
No,
It's not
no,
look
no,
like
no,
at all
no,
like
no,
a
no, no, no,
temporary.
no,
Yeah,
no.
okay.
And that's why it's so temporary. I don't like how it looks. We don't like how it looks. But, you know, the look and feel, ARB looked at the color and the design of the shed. You know, so these are all like important factors. You know, the edging around the parking lot using, what is it?
Belgian
block. Again, listen, I'm a fiscal conservative, but if you want the look and feel to be consistent across the Riding a Racket Club and the town property, those little design elements are gonna go a long way. Any other P and Z, or should I sit down? Or I do about 10 minutes or 15 minutes.
Have a seat, and I'll just
Okay,
take a look at my notes, and I'll see. What I've more. Anything comes to mind about that? Asphalt, nothing like that. Belgian
Joe, I have a
blocks.
question.
Just stick to the parking for the moment, for a second.
Parking?
Anything
Well,
else with the
it's
parking?
kind of sort of a question to Jamie and to John. If this land were given to Park and Rec, instead of being town-owned, under the Board of Selectmen's, then John, P and Z wouldn't have all of this say. The only thing you would be involved in is if there was landfill and regrading.
I'd be careful with that because you start getting the health and safety elements. So if the town wanted to put in heavy uses without parking, you're gonna run into some problems, where at some point they might need to come to us for parking, right? Because then you get complaints.
Okay, well,
every-
that's where I was going.
Yeah, yeah.
Would they still have to come to you to put in a parking lot?
Depends what the uses were, right? So
Well, if it was under Park and Rec,
if it was a dedicated parkland,
Yeah.
you're saying.
yeah, if it was dedicated
Yeah.
parkland and it was under Park and Recs, they wouldn't have to come to you for events. They can do their events on their own, basically own land, even though it's town-owned property, in the long run of the scheme. So you wouldn't have all these restrictions on this property. P and Z wouldn't have all
Oh,
these
the rest of
restrictions.
it, I thought you were just talking about parking,
And
I'm
you
sorry.
wouldn't have
Yeah.
the parking
Correct,
either, correct?
correct, unless the
Okay.
uses overwhelm the property, and then we'd have to take a look at it from a health, safety, welfare standpoint.
Okay, so at that, what would that point be?
I don't know, that's a very
Okay,
subjective
so
point, but,
if it
you
was
know,
a-
how many neighbor complaints are we gonna get because
We
people are
aren't
parking on
going,
the
we aren't,
roads?
we're working on that one right now, so. still
Well,
think-
I'm just wondering how many parking spaces we absolutely need up there, because right now we have, what was it,
Well,
90
right now, we have a
something, and-
report that says we need 92.
Yeah, and
we
that's,
can
So that's
go
what we,
up to-
that's what we need.
And then we can go up to 240 under special events.
so I'm not gonna relitigate the discussion we had.
No, I'm not
Okay,
asking you
so
to, but
I'm
I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah. So I'll just give you
How
an
we can-
example. The Dilla Running Path, which we're finally deliberating tonight. That didn't require any parking spots. We didn't get involved in that discussion because we're just talking about a path. We don't see a lot of intensity of use if we do pass this tonight. I have a final draft that we're gonna be discussing. Now, Parks and Rec, that is a dedicated parkland that did not require parking, but Parks and Rec made the request that I believe 6 spots be created there.
Right.
So
So then it has to come to you.
it didn't, it
No,
went right to the police commission.
Police commission, sorry.
Police
It
commission.
went to.
But that's on-street parking, that's why the police commission's involved.
Involved.
You know, if they wanted to do on-street parking, I guess against the wall, that could maybe go to the police commission, but we did have some input from the police commission talking about street
Right.
parking and,
Right.
and some restrictions on street parking as well, so. I'm sorry, I can't go into what ifs.
I know, I know.
I think you touched on a lot of our questions, actually, in your description, to be honest. I mean, and particularly about the quality of the construction, which I think is important. I know we had an estimate, and I said earlier that that estimate was just an estimate, and that that whatever's decided to be constructed, well, that which is decided to be constructed would go out to bid should this pass. That I just wanted to address the difference in and the request, the dollars for the request, and and that's not you, and the estimate. And so, Kate, you wanna just
Yeah.
give a little background on that?
I reviewed the estimates with the Director of Public Works and the Director of Parks and Recreation to determine were there any things in there that we could do in-house or provide in-house. And then there was also, in the estimate was the paddock fencing that had to go around the dividing line of the property, which has already been installed. So we took that out. And through the discussions with them, we determined that we could do certain things or provide certain of the items ourselves. And so we felt comfortable reducing the estimate for the construction to $600,000. The $9,000 is bond financing costs.
Thank you.
And like you said, it will go out to bid.
Okay, I guess we should talk about the walking trail.
That is included in the,
It's included in that, yeah. And the beauty, I think, Jamie, would you like to talk about the beauty of the walking trail and the handicapped access is that we're gonna gain with this property?
Yeah, what I think is a wonderful opportunity with this property is that if the RTM approves this funding, we will be able to make this fully ADA compliant recreational property, meaning the parking areas and the walking trail will be compliant for strollers and wheelchairs, and I think will be a wonderful addition to our community, probably the first of its kind where we have a fully ADA compliant recreational area. And so that's always been from day one a goal of this project, to make it ADA compliant.
And certainly as part of the Master Parks plan to have the walking trails,
Yes.
walking paths.
I don't think there are any other trails or walking paths in the town right now that are ADA compliant.
Yeah, which means that wood chips wouldn't work.
Correct. Has to be some other surface. And when we go out to bid, Kate and I were talking about this earlier today. What we'll probably do is probably ask for some alternate pricing for different kinds of surfaces. The town of New Canaan uses for all of their walking trails something called Flexi Pave, which is a very nice, comfortable surface to walk and jog and roll on. So we likely will ask for some bids for that as an alternate.
Yeah,
just to
I
see.
asked that question, thank you, because
Yeah.
I walk a lot at Waveney, and that surface that they recently redid like about 2 years ago, is a good surface
Yeah.
for, you can wheelchair, and you can, and when it snows there, you can cross-country ski on it, so it works for a lot of different things.
It is also twice the price, so we just want to get the pricing.
Right, and that's why I had thrown out from the, trying to think environment and nature and what we've done in some of the other parks, that's why I had asked about wood chips.
We weren't alone.
And I was also asking, I have two close friends in wheelchairs, so I was also asking them, I didn't expect their wheelchair to be able, for them to push their children on their wheelchair, but they do have jog strollers, and one is a severely handicapped child. And they do take her out everywhere, and she does go on almost every kind of surface for that, so that was good information.
I just thought of something I forgot to say about the parking, was that by using this method with the porous asphalt and the gravel underneath, they don't have to put in storm water abatement systems. It does it.
It infiltrates itself.
One of the questions that came up during the hearing is why not gravel? And gravel's great when you don't have a lot of traffic going through, but over time it gets compacted and it actually costs more to maintain than the designs that have been talked about.
What kind of maintenance program are you gonna have in this?
I believe there is a maintenance plan written into our stipulations that they're gonna have to, because porous asphalt, one of the downfalls is you gotta vacuum it. You can't just sweep it, because the little bits of,
Force clean.
Yeah, you gotta keep those little holes clean,
You're gonna be
basically.
vacuuming the parking area?
Yeah, well, it's a special vacuum that takes the little,
We have a
little
vacuum.
bits and
You
grime, so
have a
it
big
doesn't.
vacuum cleaner?
It's a truck. It's the same truck that we use to clean out our catch basins.
Are we also gonna
No,
use
excuse me, hang on a second, we
Oh,
just
sorry.
do, I'm sorry, just gotta stick to the committee first, and then we'll ask, whisper questions afterwards. Does anybody have any other questions that come to mind?
About
We
parking
talked,
or everything?
we talked about everything. We're talking about, we mentioned, bicycles and people coming on site on bicycles, and I had a discussion with John about, they had thought about, sidewalks, out on Middlesex. But they thought it would really be a very expensive proposition, but we did think that maybe a bike rack wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah, that'd be
It
fantastic.
would be removable, but
That would
yes.
be
Oh,
awesome.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Why would you
Because,
not? How could you
so
not have
people
it?
can get there, yeah, that
What do you
would
do
be,
with, yeah,
that would be really nice,
obvious.
yeah.
Well, I think Adele said a bike rack.
Oh, I
What
thought
we
Yeah,
a
no,
bike
she's talking about a
path.
bike
Oh,
rack,
I thought
not a
bike
sidewalk.
path.
Yes.
Or
Yeah, oh,
maybe-
a sidewalk would be
maybe
even better, but.
to Middlesex.
Now,
Not on the field, but
Sure.
reaching it, like if somebody wants to possibly ride their bike from the high school
so,
to there, or from the Oxbridge School to there, it would be nice if they could ride their bike there.
Yeah, the only thing I will
Safely.
say is I'm at all the parks, I've never seen a bike at Cherry Lawn, I'm not seeing bikes down at Wee Beach.
But
the bike
here they have
rack.
the rolling path that they could go on.
No, I love that
Yeah.
idea, I just,
It's getting there, the roads
I
are
see
not
those
very
things
conducive.
installed and I never see bikes in them, that's all,
Not very
that's just my
conducive.
Because it's
Anyway.
dangerous to try to get there.
Because we need the sidewalks to get there.
Or bike
Exactly.
path.
We talked just a little bit about the grading on the fields, that there really wasn't gonna be any. I think the idea was to use the fill, if I'm right, to use the fill that comes from the excavating at the parking,
Keep it on site.
and keep it on site and use it to fill in some depressions in the,
Another question, the comfort station. Why is it not included in this thing?
so we felt, Parks and Rec felt that they could start with a shed. And the shed's intended to hold equipment,
But
lawn
that's
maintenance
different
equipment.
than the comfort station, no?
Correct.
right.
Correct.
Yeah.
The
She's
comfort
getting the
station
other end.
is a whole nother issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
We would have to, there's no easy way to bring a sewer line into that property. No close location where an existing one is, so we'd have to consider whether or not to do septic fields or to go to bring the sewer line in, so it's another bigger issue. And I believe we may be able to do it with porta potties, not,
But
If
this
they're
is
properly
a
screened.
1,000 square foot building?
No, it's
no,
not.
that's, no.
Not the shed, I mean the other building.
Yeah, the comfort
No, it's a
station.
porta potty.
No.
You get conflating two things.
We're
Yeah.
two different
This,
buildings.
this project before you, the
Yeah.
funding before you, and what we're intending right now is for a 12 by 20
Yes,
shed.
I understand that, but in the plan, there is a
Yes, there is a-
plan
in the
to
plan, there's
build
the possibility.
1,000 square foot
Correct.
building.
In the
That's what we got
future.
approval
Yeah.
to one day.
But you will need money for that also?
Yes.
No?
If we decide to build it one day, we'll have to come back for funding for the building.
Would it make sense to include it all in the same?
Well, actually,
Bond?
we think it's better to use the shed for now because it's going to be located in the southwest parking lot, and there was some discussion with the neighbors about appropriate placement for the ultimate permanently constructed comfort building. So that using the shed allows us to put it in one place, see how it works, move it if need be to another location, and then when we sort out whether it's a septic or sewer connection, the optimal placement for the permanent building structure. So this gives us an opportunity to try things before we commit to permanent construction.
Okay. The site plan is on the website that I sent to you.
Right.
Okay, so you saw the site plan, so you saw where it was, where they were, where we're planning
No, I
to
mean,
put
I
it.
was just questioning the 1,000 square foot, why it's not in
Yeah.
the. in
You
the
see it on that
budget
site,
money
on
and
that
where it's
site,
gonna go.
on that
Yeah.
site plan, they did outline what I think 1,000 square foot would be
Yeah.
in that area,
Mm.
so, okay.
We,
Anybody-
we have equipment to move a 20 by 12 foot shed.
Do we have equipment? I assume that we have equipment that can move just about anything, but it also,
I mean, that's
Yeah.
quite a large shed, 20 feet by
Yeah.
12.
Front end loader with a forklift.
Would a forklift could do it?
Public Works can.
I have to hop, so is anything else for P and Z? Yeah.
Oh, was yours for P and Z? Okay, so,
So I
thank
would-
you.
Oh, yeah,
Go ahead.
thank you. No,
Oh.
mine was more, the
Thank you very
security
much,
for a
Dawn.
shed, like, so, I don't know what the costs are for the riding
get it.
mower and the standing mower, but I did, ask the guys their input on where they thought a shed could go that they would be able to access the mowers for, to make it easy, and I asked them, as part of my due diligence, why would you, why do you need to, why would it be helpful to have a shed put here when you already have it, when you're already bringing it in from Public Works? So I understand their answer. I mean, we acquired this property, right, 16.2 acres, so we have more space, and if they're cutting at Cherry Lawn and they're cutting at, Highland, you know, then if there's a place that's secure and we can keep a riding and a standing mower, that saves them the time of going back and forth and back and forth. But my question is, how do we make that secure if we do that? I mean, those are probably pretty expensive things, and how do we make sure that we don't do the shed and then these pieces of equipment get stolen?
Kate, you wanna? We lock it up, yes?
it'll be a locking structure like any other shed, like the new little shed that's down at the beach.
Yeah, but
You know, we have
keep
technology
mowers in there,
equipment
do we?
in there. We've got other technology equipment in those buildings, and they get locked, so.
Any other
That's
questions?
a concern for me, financially.
I'm gonna open it up to,
I have another question.
well, okay.
How come there was no advisory committee formed on this project? All the other, the beaches and their advisory.
You mean the building committee?
You mean a
Yeah.
building committee?
Yeah.
The dollar level, it was below the dollar level that requires.
No, I mean a little advisory committee for the Highland Fields. Like sometimes they have committee, didn't you have that for the Weed Beach, the
Short lane?
rebuilding the short lane? Advisory committees that maybe also have some neighbors and some RTM members and some other people on the committee to kind of come together and see what is the feeling of the use of the field. Did you ever consider having that?
Well, you know, I think we did an extraordinary amount of public outreach on how to use that. We worked very closely with Parks and Rec on the utilization of the fields, future potential utilization for the fields. Since we were prohibited from actually, with the exception of this 1,000 square foot comfort building, we're prohibited from constructing anything permanent on this property. So it, quite frankly, didn't rise to the level of needing a building committee.
So how come?
It was all, I mean, it was all laid out in the purchase.
How come it's not parts of Parks and Rec then?
There's a variety of reasons. It's a smart idea to keep certain open space parcels in the control of the town, not dedicating it as park space. You cannot, once you dedicate something as park space, you can't repurpose it for any reason in the future. So if for example, Parks and Rec, I have no idea when this would ever happen, but if Parks and Rec ever decided to divest themselves of certain parklands, they would need to replace it with other open space, and by having this parcel of land, it allows for that future opportunity. So we saw it as the most flexible opportunity for the town of Darien going forward for things that we might not even be able to conceive of today.
Okay.
Well, one of my questions was the maintenance program that's gonna be instituted, and we discussed vacuuming.
Okay.
The next one would be weight limits restraints in that parking lot.
In the parking lot.
Because if you put heavy vehicles or trucks or something, you're gonna be compacting the
The
stone
porous
and everything. Excuse me?
The porous asphalt would get compacted?
Right, because you're gonna have give with the rocks that's in the system. And you're gonna have the same problem as if it didn't have it, where it could become mush, so if you put an overweight vehicle in there, it could damage the system.
So if it's an amusement ride or something, a heavy amusement
A
ride?
moving truck, UPS
Or
truck until
trailer.
they're loaded or something like that.
You know, that's good to know, and we'll talk to the
Yes.
engineers, and, if there should be a weight limit, then we would look at putting one in.
And communicate such to the Oxbridge Riding and Racket Club, which would be the likely, you know, or, you know, if we bring in special vendors for special events, we would need to know that
And I
information.
think the other thing that I had, the other concern was, I guess during the meeting, someone had mentioned oil spills on it. It'll go right through the porous pavement and drain out, which that was a concern for me, because that's an environmental spill that's going into the system. So I think that's something that we gotta really consider looking at as well.
But you said at the RTM that the oil won't go through it.
That is with crushed stone. It ultimately compacts when combined with your typical vehicle oils. Over time, it creates an impervious surface. But I think what,
No, you said it was the porous asphalt was very good against oil spills.
no, I didn't, I don't recall saying that.
Okay.
I don't recall saying, but we've not asked that question. That's a good question to ask.
Yeah, it's not just limited to oil, but like antifreeze or anything of that nature, what kind of chemicals can be absorbed into the ground, because now we have porous asphalt.
We did mention that the parking would be grass pavers too, didn't we? I think we did as we went through the beginning of that.
You
Yeah.
did.
Which is the same porous pavers, but with holes in them so that the grass can grow up. It will look better.
Like a Weed Beach.
Yeah. Well, hopefully.
I'd like to go back to this,
Let's, we're almost done here, folks, so, I think, it's going back to the same people, so let's.
Yeah, but I mean,
We're
this is
here
the
for-
time to talk about it, so let's talk about
Go
it.
ahead, Cheryl.
Yeah.
well, I wanna really understand your thinking, Jamie, and your board's thinking of not dedicating this land, because I am, and have been, since I've been on Park and Rec for numerous years, made sure a lot of these parks were dedicated, so that they couldn't be taken away and used for a building or whatever. And, 131N of this general Connecticut statutes says that they have to be swapped. So if, let's just say hypothetically, like you just said, if Park and Rec decides to, let's just use the Diller property, it's 5 acres of land. And they decided to get rid of that land and give it to the town, but to swap it for 5 acres over here at Ox Ridge or Highland Farms. Then you would have 5 acres of this 16 acres that would become dedicated property.
Correct.
So if we're let's just say if we did this tomorrow, we do 5 acres tomorrow, then another couple of years we do another 5 acres, and then, you've got 10 acres of dedicated property up there. Why not just give this all to Park and Rec now? It could be used for everything that you wanna use it for. You can use it for, dedicated as open space, park and recreational use. So it's going to be used for open space. It would be used for Park and Rec festivities or whatever they wanted to do on it. So I just wanna understand, why not use that now? And then we wouldn't have to go through all the stipulations of P and Z.
Well, the good news is that we are through P and Z. We got our
Well,
planning
I
and
know
zoning
that.
approval. And honestly, the real answer, Cheryl, is that we don't know what the town's future needs are. And we don't wanna tie the hands of the town for, generations to come. So someday, maybe that request will come. Maybe there will be a will on the part of the town to move in that direction, but that isn't where we are today.
You see,
Cheryl, I saw your name on the Diller, background.
Oh, yeah,
But
it's
it
all over the
was,
place.
she's in the minutes for, when it was dedicated.
Right.
Yeah.
So she's.
But to me is, you're preserving this land for the future generations. You're
Well,
preserving it to
yeah.
not make sure that there's no, if something were to come up, They could sell this, you could sell this property, you know, we all probably won't be here in 30 years. Somebody else could sell this property and put housing up there.
It would have to wait
Well,
at least 30 years.
I think the
Well,
town
and
has,
that's what I'm saying, in 30 years,
the
it would
town
be
and the
lost.
RTM has done a very good job of making sure that we've preserved this property, first through the tax settlement, second through taking advantage of the right of first refusal and being able to purchase the property. So I feel pretty good about the work we've done together to make sure that this property stays open space.
Okay.
Patty, did you have another question? I'll let you think.
No, I mean,
Sandy, do you have anything? Okay.
You went through all my questions with them.
I
at the
tried.
meeting.
I tried.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting, when you asked about the Belgian blocks question, I was down on the farm at the Nature Center this weekend, and, first of all, there was parking everywhere. I don't know if any of y'all were there was parking on the street, but there was also parking everywhere on Cherry Lawn.
On every piece of
Everywhere, on
grass
every
there
piece
was
of
in
grass.
Cherry Lawn.
And it was fine, and we didn't have to pay all this money to pave it, and the grass is still there. And regarding the Belgian blocks, you know, I'm there all the time, and I know where I park down below where it's striped, but on the overflow parking up above, where it's more, dirt, it's not striped, and it's not Belgian block, it's just, you know, little timber wood things that we can get from other places when the trees fall, and so,
I'd love to elaborate a little bit more on
from a
that.
cost perspective.
Great. I called Craig Flaherty after our meeting to talk about Belgian block. And the Belgian block treatment is actually on the flat. And it's intended to be the barrier between the porous asphalt and the other surface, so that the porous asphalt doesn't flake away on the edges. And the Belgian block is actually the cheapest of the three potential alternatives. The other two alternatives are steel edging, which is the most expensive, and then concrete, poured concrete edging, which is more expensive and doesn't have the longevity of Belgian block. It's not for decoration. It has
Or
a-
not just
it
for
perce- it-
decoration.
It performs an important function in the construction of the parking area itself.
That was my question, I was gonna ask about the Belgian block, thank you.
Oh, yeah, I think Patty's comment was that the grass wasn't damaged from the parking. But,
I mean, it's a once-a-year event, too.
Well,
Yeah.
I
No,
think that's
and
the,
granted
that's
that.
the answer.
Yeah,
That-
yeah, and I know that when we do,
Yeah,
we
just
have
what
8
happens with
events
Oxford.
allowed for these special events, that if, you know, Pam and Jamie Dawson can do these creative, like turkey trots and things like that, and fun family events, that's when we'll have that overflow of cars. We're gonna have the overflow anyway, that overflow is gonna be on grass, it's not gonna be on the paved area.
yeah, I think what Susan is saying is the police were overwhelmed by down on the farm, the parking.
It was a good turnout, it was a nice day.
It was a perfect storm. for
Yeah, I mean,
no
it's a
storm.
good problem to have, but there were some challenges that the Parks and Rec Commission and Committee should be aware of going forward.
Can I just say something in general?
And the striping.
So one
I think-
comment I wanna make as far as at least my opinion as far as the Board of Selectmen, I think we tried to make this as flexible as possible. Plan for what may be versus what is, as far as the application was concerned, make it very broad. So that way there could be flexibility with the whole property, versus if you made it very narrow scoped, then, we don't have the ability to do certain things. So I think a lot of this, it might happen, it's not to say it's going to happen on a consistent basis, but it certainly can happen now without any problems. And I think parking in this town is a huge issue with many people. We really hope people follow the rules and park where they're supposed to. I think we can come up with a lot of examples of how people decide, this space is good or that space is good. So if we didn't have parking up there, I can only imagine what would happen to Middlesex Road. So I view it as a good thing with a lot of flexibility versus some of you may feel it's too much, but plan for the future versus plan for today is kind of how I view the whole thing. I don't know if that helps anyone or not.
So, Ellen, do you have any?
I just think it's an awful lot of money, 600,000.
It is, we'll close with that. And Diane, do you have anything? I don't have anything else. You guys? Okay. It is, and then there's the money. You're right, it is a lot of money. And so you have to decide whether, if you think it's too much money, or if you think it's appropriate.
Yeah.
It's appropriate, so. Are there any comments from anyone else that's attending? Okay. You state your name and, et cetera.
Sure. My name is Patrick, I don't want to stand because I'm going to block some people out.
Sure.
My name is Patrick Kane, as I said, I'm from District 1. To start off, I am 100% in favor of developing this property and turning it into a great facility. I'm also 100% in favor of spending the right amount of money to turn this into the kind of property that is sort of envisioned when we look at the POCD and the types of amenities and the quality of development that should come out of a property like this. We've spent a lot of money so far. My concern is, I have a number of concerns. The first is that I'm concerned that we're piecemealing this out. Meaning, we're doing a little bit of the development now, to your earlier point. 600,000, actually it's closer to, I heard an estimate of 700 and some odd thousand, but some of it's being done internally. It's still a lot of money being spent. And if we were to develop this property the way it should be developed and planned the way it should be developed, it would be well over $1 million to develop this property. That's my estimate, just based on rough estimates of penciling things out. I'm not an expert in this area, but I've looked at and I've seen enough building projects to think that it could very easily get to $1 million or more than that when you factor in sidewalks, the full size of what could be constructed there, the parking, what I think is excessive parking, the walking path, etc. I think the tricky thing about going over $1 million is you would then be obliged to put together a building committee by statute. So I happen to think that would be the right way to do this, even if you parcel it out over time. If ultimately the town would like to build a terrific parkland facility, whatever we want to call it, and the overall project value is going to be $1 million or $1.5 million in today's dollars, we should have a building committee. This has been a very contentious. I've added to the debate because I have serious thoughts about how this has all come about. But I'm not the only one that has strong opinions. There are a lot of neighbors, there are a lot of people in town that have strong opinions about this, about what this project should be. And I think that a building committee is the right way to do this and to balance all of those interests. I also believe, sorry, I'll be brief.
Yeah.
I also believe that, the 92 spaces seems to suggest that the engineers were given a definition to define this project by 4 concurrent athletic programs going on at the same time. To me, I think that speaks volumes of what the overall intent of this property is. I haven't made that a secret. I feel very strongly that this is going to turn into another athletic field in town. And if we look at the Parks and Rec survey, the POCD, another athletic facility, another athletic field is very low down on the list of priorities. So I think I'm not opposed to spending money. I want to do this the right way. I want to do this in a way that it balances the interests of everyone, not just those interested in athletics. It has to be everyone. And the best way to do that is not from a core group of people but from a building committee, we've had great success with building committees in this town. And I think that this could be another possibility for that.
So if I could respond to that a little bit. It's certainly not my intention nor the intention of the Board of Selectmen for Highland Farms to be an athletic facility. It never was the intention. Parks and Rec will have exclusive jurisdiction over programming the space. And the way the parking was determined was to think about Parks and Rec programming, perhaps a little tot soccer program where you could take some field space, fields that won't be cut in. There'll be no definition of any playing fields unless someone chooses to go out and put some cones in to define a field. And maybe have the little, where you take a field and you go across the field to have a couple games of little tot soccer. There's no varsity sports activities that are allowed on this facility. So I strongly disagree with the characterization that this will become an athletics facility. It's intended for public use by the entire town of Darien for both passive and active recreation, yoga, walking, whatever activities you can imagine, whatever Parks and Rec can imagine themselves in terms of programming, archery, things of that nature that we don't have space for right now. So I can only tell you what the Board of Selectmen's intention, what Parks and Recreation's intention is. In terms of a building project that's more than $1 million, the Board of Selectmen doesn't desire to build a comfort building at this moment. We simply sought permission from planning and zoning to have the opportunity to do that in the future. We may never need to build a comfort building if the shed functions perfectly well. If people are satisfied with a seasonal porta potty, we will be fine to continue in perpetuity with that arrangement. And in terms of building sidewalks, there's been no indication from the Board of Selectmen and probably a very, very slim likelihood that we would ever consider building a sidewalk up Middlesex Road for a variety of reasons, not simply cost, but also the topography along Middlesex Road is not conducive to building a sidewalk. And it would fall down on the priority list in terms of public sidewalks. The Public Works Department has a series of new sidewalks that would that we would likely support well in advance of a sidewalk. I'm not even sure where you would start. Perhaps High School Lane would be the natural starting point for a sidewalk that might come up Middlesex Road. So that's something that the town will perhaps consider in the future. What I will say, kind of a little something to think about for the future, the town of Darien's going to be working with the town of New Canaan on a 2-town bike circuit, bicycle path. And the intention is to connect places like the beach in Waveney Park, maybe Grace Farms up in New Canaan, and certainly Highland Farm will be along the way. So putting in a bicycle rack would be a great idea because I assume it will be right along at least one of the bike trails, and we're working with WestCog to help us develop that sort of regional bike plan.
Thank you. The ladies that are sitting in the hall, does anyone want to make a comment? If you do, introduce yourself. Or are you just here to listen?
I'm Lauren Callahan, and I'm one of the neighbors on the field, and I just echo what you said so beautifully. I think that I've done...
Excuse me, you wanna come in so that they can hear you on the tape? I'm not sure if they can hear her out in the hallway or not.
Good point.
Hi. The numbers just don't add up, and I see this idea of dribbling funds and then coming back to request more funds, and then dribbling those funds and then coming back to request more funds. And I think we very quickly, the funds that were given for the RTM, albeit that there's funds coming from other sources, add up to 770,000, I think it is. And we're already so close to $1 million. And so the comfort station will put us over the $1 million, I think, right away, I would imagine. The landscaping's not on there yet.
Yes,
Yes,
is
it
the
is.
plan,
Under the 600?
yes.
It is, and it is 600, it's not 7 something.
No,
Six
but the
oh, yes.
overall funds, they may be coming from different places, it is over
The-
600.
The request is for 609,
I understand that.
so that's what we're voting on. Okay,
I understand that. The premise
I
that
got you. I get what you're saying. After a minute, I got it.
Okay, so we will very quickly be at $1 million on top of the 6.2 that has been spent. And I just think with the fact that it is so contentious, the fact that the neighbors really don't feel like they've been heard, there've been conversations, they're very spotty, and we certainly don't feel like the fact that we are a neighborhood that didn't buy into a park. We bought into a bucolic horse field. They're our greatest assets. The neighbors should be a part of this. I live right on the corner. I can tell you that in the last 2 weeks, 3 times I've not been able to get out of my driveway. And the activities haven't even started. And that's because the parking has already been, the traffic is marked from Mansfield all the way down to the Oxford corner and around. I don't know if it's Waze, I don't know what's going on, but we haven't even started activities yet. And I really feel like between the $1 million and the congestion in the space, the fact that neighbors are not pleased with this, I think we can come together better instead of actually dividing us up. This has been very divisive.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question, please?
Mhm.
What time of day could you not get out of your
Those are
driveway?
both afternoon,
In the afternoon?
both afternoon.
I will
And
say
that's
that.
not the
Can
only
we-
time, but that's
I think
just
we're
this
ready to
past
vote,
2
Yeah,
weeks.
actually.
I'm
Thank
just
you.
gonna say
That's
that I
the
did
last
take, I was coming home from, coming off the Merritt and then coming from New Canaan on Friday home to my home. And I come past Oxford School, I turn at the whole Cogan House, as we call it, and go around past Highland Field. And it was 3:35 on Friday. And the traffic was backed from the corner of Mansfield all the way down to the stop sign at Middlesex. I actually took a video. I'm not always there at that time. I am going back and forth on that parallel a lot. But I am happy to forward you the video. It was backed from the stop sign all the way around that side.
And that's
So-
represented.
So
before.
Adele,
Yeah.
if I could just be clear, Parks and Recreation Department has the operational control over the programming.
Exactly.
And it has already been discussed with the Parks and Rec Department that if there are times when there is traffic congestion due to normal everyday traffic, not activities at Highland Farms, that they should avoid programming at those particular times. They should schedule around the peak flows of traffic, if you will, and they have the ability to do that. So there's no programming on the calendar right now. There's no programming that says there's going to be programs coming and going on that field at 3:30 in the afternoon. So we have a great opportunity to work with the Parks and Rec Department to make sure that the programming fits with neighborhood conditions. Strongly recommend that.
Okay, I think if that happens, that's great. It's just one of the things, one of the things that got everybody so uptight
Of course.
was the very open, when you all, the Board of Selectmen voted Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., 3 p.m. until dusk. And then Saturdays, 9 a.m. till 6 or
Patty,
dusk Sunday.
Patty,
No,
we're
no,
here
no,
for
this
the,
is-
we're here for the money though, can we just stick to the
But
money?
I
The
think
money.
this is just, I think it's important because we've had turnover on this committee for the last 3 years, and it's different people every time. So whoever was on this committee in 2016, there's a lot of people who aren't on it now, and there's a lot
That's
of new
correct.
people who are really not up to speed. So they're not going to be knowing all of this information. So
I certainly hope they do, because they certainly have been given an awful lot of
Yeah,
But my
documents
point
to read,
is-
sent a
Patty.
lot of stuff out, and it's all
but
on
my point is, if
video
we
now.
can,
Video, or whatever they call it.
and then, again, so I'm just saying that that's a really wide berth, and that's what got people nervous. Do you know what I mean? So I'm just giving you
Flexibility.
feedback.
Yeah.
The other thing is, again, as part of my due diligence, I'm hearing tiny tots, but I also talked to John Gallagher, who's head of DSA last year, and he had said, you know, hey, listen, it's just our U14 travel team. So that's not tiny tots, but that's U14 travel team that needed soccer in the spring. We only need it for, he said, 10 weeks, and he said we only need it in the spring, and it's from, I think it was 4 to 6 or 4:30 to 6 o'clock. So, I mean, that falls into everybody, all the moms or kids are commuting in their cars. That's extra additional time, Monday through Thursday through Friday at that time, if we saw that traffic 3:30. So, you understand why people aren't concerned? That's all. So if we, you know, my goal coming onto Parks and Rec is to communicate and work with Pam and Jamie Dawson so we can make this an awesome place for us
Absolutely,
to
Patty,
use.
that's what we all wanna do.
Right?
I think I'd like to call the question. It's like, at this point, I'd like to, have a motion to, let's find it, shall we? Vote on the, 19-9, an appropriation of $609,000 for Highland Farm Improvements Project, and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes to meet said appropriation. Make a motion, please.
Second. Oh, so moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please raise your right hand.
This is a call on the question.
This,
Your right hand.
oh, no,
This is
not
the vote.
on the motion. This is the question.
This is the
I just read it, yes.
Okay.
Sorry, should I?
No, you got it.
Should I vote it for, to call the question,
Wait, wait.
calling the question first?
What are we voting on?
Hang on.
We're
I'm sorry,
voting
sorry.
on 19-9, an appropriation of $609,000 for the Highland Farm Improvements Project, and authorizing issuance of bonds and notes to
Okay,
meet said appropriation.
okay,
Thank you.
All in favor, please raise their hand.
okay, so.
Hang on, everybody, sorry, it's just,
No worries.
just wanna make sure I get this right, this is, the voting one.
Okay,
We
put
don't
your
want
hands
any
back up so she
hanging
knows
chads.
where we are.
Yeah,
Okay,
sorry,
everybody-
don't lose feeling in your arms, everybody.
Absent.
Okay,
Cheryl's yes. It's probably easy to take the ones that get You are, whatever you are. Andy's not here. Sandy, she
yes,
is.
okay,
Mark is yes.
okay,
Ken is.
okay, thank you guys for being
Jones,
patient.
Jones, yes.
She's absent, absent, and absent.
Okay, but wait, oh, it's, no, okay, got it.
Okay, all opposed?
Thank you.
Do you wanna say no and then abstain? Cause when you say,
I'll
I
get
don't know,
there.
no, I don't know if no is.
Right, no,
Okay, thank you, just to qualify.
No.
no,
No. Okay.
that's
Yeah.
one?
Okay, so just,
Oh.
Suzanne Hamel.
Okay, and then
And
Patty is
Abstentions?
We haven't done
I'm abstaining,
that. Abstaining is the one
Okay.
you
thank
abstained.
you.
okay,
Did you get everything?
yeah.
Just-
Yes, there's one no, one abstain.
8 votes yes, 2 no, correct? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 yes, 1 no, and 1 abstention.
Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.